Once upon a time, in a small town, there lived a scientist named Dr. Smith. Dr. Smith was a proud and arrogant man who believed that he was the most intelligent person in the town. He would often boast about his intelligence and belittle others who he thought were less intelligent than him. One day, a young girl came to Dr. Smith with a question. She asked him why the sky was blue. Dr. Smith, being the arrogant man that he was, laughed at her and said that it was a silly question. He told her that she was too young to understand the science behind it. The girl was disappointed and walked away. She felt like she was not smart enough to understand science. She started to believe that she was not intelligent enough to ask questions. Days passed, and Dr. Smith couldn't stop thinking about the girl. He felt guilty for not answering her question. He realized that he had been too arrogant and that he needed to change his ways. Dr. Smith went to the girl's house and apologized to her. He told her that he was wrong to laugh at her question and that he should have answered it. He explained to her why the sky was blue and encouraged her to ask more questions. The girl was happy and started to ask more questions. She realized that she was not stupid, but she was a genius in her own way. From that day on, Dr. Smith became a humble and kind scientist. He listened to his students and answered their questions with patience and kindness. He realized that the only way to be truly intelligent was to be humble and to learn from others. The story teaches us that arrogance can be dangerous. We should not be too proud of our intelligence and should always be open to learning from others. We should be humble and kind to others, and we should use our intelligence to make the world a better place.
Once upon a time, in a quiet village nestled among rolling hills and lush green fields, there lived a cunning and wealthy landlord. He was known far and wide for his shrewd business acumen and his vast expanse of land that stretched as far as the eye could see. However, his riches came not from honest work but from exploiting the vulnerability of the poor villagers. The landlord had a sinister scheme. He would lend money to the struggling villagers in exchange for a mortgage on their precious lands. Over time, he would add exorbitant interest to the principal amount, making it impossible for the impoverished farmers to repay. Inevitably, they would have no choice but to surrender their cherished plots to the greedy landlord. In the heart of this village, there lived a kind and resilient old lady. She had a small piece of land in her name, which she had inherited from her ancestors. Despite her age and the absence of any family, she toiled tirelessly on that land, growing crops to sustain herself and maintain her modest lifestyle. The landlord cast a covetous eye on the old lady's land, but despite his relentless efforts, he couldn't persuade her to part with it. Frustrated by his failed attempts, he resorted to a devious plan. He bribed a corrupt government official and forged documents to claim ownership of the old lady's land. One fateful day, accompanied by the conniving government official, the landlord marched to the old lady's doorstep, armed with these fraudulent papers to stake his claim. The old lady, bewildered and shocked, pleaded with the officials, explaining that she had lived on that land her entire life, and it had been rightfully passed down through generations. Despite her tearful pleas, the corrupt court sided with the landlord, and the old lady was left heartbroken and dispossessed. With a heavy heart, she began packing her belongings, preparing to leave her beloved home. As she was about to depart, the old lady approached the triumphant landlord. With a quivering voice, she spoke, "You have taken everything from me today. This land, this soil, holds the memories of my entire life. It is very dear to me. Please, may I carry a basket filled with this soil so that I can keep a part of this place with me? It will provide me solace in my final days." The landlord, his heart tainted by greed, saw no harm in granting her request. He smirked and replied, "Very well, you may fill your basket." The old lady, her hands trembling, began filling her basket with the precious soil from her land. But in her grief and haste, she overfilled the basket, and it became too heavy for her to lift onto her shoulders. Turning to the landlord, she implored, "Sir, could you please lend me a hand and place this basket on my head?" Without a second thought, the landlord reached out to assist her. As he struggled to lift the overloaded basket onto her head, he realized the weight of his own greed. He looked into the old lady's eyes, filled with tears and humility, and a sudden epiphany struck him like a thunderbolt. "Didn't you think before you overfilled this basket?" the landlord questioned. "You're struggling even to lift it now. How do you plan to carry this with you?" The old lady smiled softly and replied, "This entire land was my own. I spent my entire life here, yet I struggle to carry a single basket of soil with me while I am still breathing. I won't be able to carry it with me when I die. You, sir, have so much of other people's land. I can't help but wonder, how will you carry it all with you?" The landlord stood there, stunned by the profound wisdom of the old lady's words. The weight of his actions and the emptiness of his greed engulfed him. He realized the folly of his ways, the pain he had inflicted on others, and the hollowness of his wealth. Deeply remorseful, he begged the old lady for forgiveness and returned her land, vowing to mend his ways. From that day on, the cunning landlord transformed into a benevolent and compassionate man, helping the villagers he had once exploited. He became an advocate for fairness and justice, using his resources to uplift the lives of those he had wronged. And so, the village learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of greed and the redemptive power of humility and compassion. The old lady, now with her land rightfully restored, continued to tend to her soil, nurturing not only her crops but also the hearts of all who knew her story. The moral of this tale serves as a reminder that greed can blind us to the true value of what we possess, and in our relentless pursuit of more, we may lose what truly matters. Greed can blind us to the true value of what we possess, and in our relentless pursuit of more, we may lose sight of the genuine worth of our actions and relationships. It reminds us that true happiness and contentment do not come from amassing wealth or power at the expense of others, but from acts of kindness, compassion, and understanding. The story teaches us that it's never too late to acknowledge our mistakes, seek redemption, and make amends for the harm we've caused. Ultimately, it underscores the transformative power of humility, forgiveness, and self-awareness in finding a path to redemption and a more meaningful life.
The Lazy Man's Journey. A Zen motivational story. Once in a little village, there was a young man known for his laziness. While everyone else worked hard, he preferred lounging under a shady tree, daydreaming his days away. One day, a wise old monk visited the village and gave the young man a special challenge: fetch a feather from the top of the tallest mountain. At first, the young man thought it was impossible. But then, the monk explained that the feather wasn't on the mountain, but on the other side, in a cave. This piqued the young man's curiosity, and he decided to accept the challenge. Climbing the mountain was tough, and he felt tired and sweaty. However, something exciting started to happen. As he climbed higher, he felt happier and more excited. When he finally reached the top, he was exhausted but super proud of himself. The real challenge came when he had to go down the other side to find the cave with the feather. Going down was even harder, and he slipped and fell many times. But he didn't give up because he really wanted that feather. When he found the cave and the feather inside, he was thrilled. But then, he realized he had to climb back up to return it to the monk. It seemed impossible, but he remembered the happiness he felt at the top. So, he pushed himself to do it again. Climbing back up was tough, but he didn't give up. He was determined to prove to himself that he could do it. When he returned the feather to the monk smiled and said, "Well done! You've learned something important today." The monk explained that laziness isn't something we should accept. It's a challenge we should overcome. The young man understood that he could achieve great things if he put his mind to it. This story teaches us that we can overcome laziness by setting goals, working hard, and not giving up, even when things seem tough. By doing this, we can become better and stronger,